smokes, ladies and gentlemen, things are getting tense in Venezuela. I want you to ask who is driving this bus. And Nicolas Maduro has announced that he is willing to arm the workers of Venezuela. President Maduro orders distribution of rifles to worker militias across Venezuela. Now, before people get their panties in a bunch, you may be wondering, whoa, why? What is happening? What's going on? Why is he doing that? Let's be very clear here. Maduro made it very clear that this is not what he wanted. He does not want conflict with the United States. But the US government decided, F what you have to say. We are going to come for you anyway. As I mentioned to you before, Venezuela has large amount of oil reserves. We're talking billions and billions of tons of oil reserves. So they have a lot of oil. That's what this is really about. Trump actually let that slip at one point. So they use this excuse of Venezuela has these drug cartels, so we're going to go after them, the drug cartels. They send warships to the Caribbean. They start attacking and killing people on these speedboats, only to come to find out these boats, many of them are not even from Venezuela, and they weren't sending any drugs. On one of the boats in particular, there were two guys from Trinidad and Tobago who were killed, not from Venezuela. So the reason why Nicolas Maduro is now deciding to make this decision is because of this report that came out over the weekend. The U.S. is poised to strike military targets in Venezuela in escalation against Maduro regime. This is where we're headed now. Now the U.S. wants to go after the military targets in Venezuela. Again, they want the oil. One thing we can say about Trump is this: at least he has no filter. He makes it very clear, yeah, we got to get the oil. Trump has made the decision to attack military installations inside Venezuela, and the strikes could come at any moment. Let's go on here. Sources told the Herald that the targets, which could be struck by air in a matter of days or even hours, also aim to decapitate the cartel's hierarchy. U.S. officials believe the cartel's exports around 500 tons of cocaine yearly, split between Europe and the United States. While sources declined to say whether Maduro himself is a target, one of them said his time is running out. Maduro was about to find himself trapped and might soon discover he cannot flee the country even if he decided to. What's worse for him, there is now more than one general willing to capture and hand him over, fully aware that one thing is to talk about death and it's another to see it coming. So this is why Maduro is now choosing to arm the worker militias across Venezuela. Just more escalation happening across the globe. And if Venezuela didn't have all that oil, the United States wouldn't even be bothered there. Again, all these countries that we go into are countries that have resources that the U.S. wants. Now, some people are pointing to this and they're saying, well, wasn't this the socialist way? Let's go ahead and take a look at that. What was the socialist way back in the day? I thought I had that here. Maybe I don't. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. Maybe I do. Here we go. I said it here. Damn, Maduro wasn't playing around when he said he would arm the workers. Yeah, like this is just a doozy. Here it is right here, folks. Thank you, Worker Wombat. Sounds like Maduro has been reading a bit of American history. I approve. Given this history, it is understandable that some of the firmest proponents of gun ownership in the 20th century were Black Americans. Article number 2 of the constitutional amendments, Malcolm X argued, provides you and me the right to own a rifle or a shotgun. Even such proponents of nonviolence as MLK Jr. purchased a firearm and installed armed guards around his house. The cornerstone of the self-styled Maoist group, the Black Panthers, rather worshipped guns. Nor were white socialists against gun ownership. Eugene Debs, a 4-time socialist candidate for president, saw gun control as a means for capitalists to install a tyranny over a weaponless working class. Debs would pay the price for such views. He was jailed by President Wilson for criticizing American involvement in World War I. Another world war later and across the ocean, another socialist would oppose gun control. George Orwell, who, as Christopher Hitchens once wrote, was a conservative in many things, but not politics. He supported the right of citizens to bear arms. Some might say that it was only natural that a former coolie crushing colonial policeman such as Orwell would be a gun enthusiast. But Orwell viewed gun control through a politically socialist, not a law and order lens. So it appears that Maduro is taking that same approach by giving the arms to the people. And I'm here to tell you this. I have had people on this show who have been to Venezuela, and they have made it very clear that the terrain in Venezuela is not something that would necessarily be easy for U.S. military to navigate. But you're talking about millions of people that would be armed. Maduro was not bluffing. Maduro was not joking around. And what the U.S. really wants, besides the oil, they want to overthrow Maduro. This is something that, Trump wanted to do during his first term. They want to get him out and install a Western puppet that is willing to do what they want, give them those resources. We've been doing this for years as a country. We've been doing it for years. Gaddafi wasn't willing to bend the knee. They got rid of him and installed a Western puppet. Saddam Hussein wasn't willing to. You can have whatever you want to say about Saddam Hussein, but ISIS didn't come about until after he was killed. So what does that tell you? So they want to put in their own puppet who is willing to bend the knee. Here's the problem. This would be a problem for the United States, and I want to tell you why. It turns out that Venezuela has friends. Let's see who some of those friends are. U.S. squeeze on Venezuela won't bring about rapid collapse of Maduro. In fact, it might boomerang on Washington. Let's get into it. I think I have to scoot this over just a little bit there. There we go. Nicolas Maduro has been the leader since 2013. He's not taking any chances. In recent weeks, he responded to Trump's administration moves as if invasion were imminent. After a September emergency decree and martial rhetoric about republic in arms, the Venezuelan president says militias and reservists are now mobilized nationwide. Again, we're talking about millions of people. Compare that to 2,000 troops that were sent there. The leftist leader has ordered armed forces, police, and militia to deploy across 284 battlefronts, a national defense posture that surges troops on sensitive borders. He has also massed 25,000 soldiers near Colombia, a likely vector for infiltration. Let's jump ahead here. Roughly 4.5 million members of the National Bolivarian Militia, an auxiliary force created in 2005 and made up civilian volunteers and reservists, have reportedly mobilized. So this is what I'm talking about. He got people all over the place. Okay. So this is not good. Not good. Not something that we really want. We should be involved in at all. But here we go. Now I want to show you who the friends are. Venezuela has powerful friends overseas. Here we go. One of them is Russia. On October 28th, a Russian Il-76 heavy cargo plane operated by a sanctioned carrier tied to the Russian military logistics landed in Caracas after a multi-stop route through the Caucasus and West Africa. If not an outright sign of solidarity, this is a signal that Russia can airlift advisors, parts, and munitions at will. We would be looking at another conflict with Russia. See, that's the thing. Like some of these countries that the U.S. government chooses to attack, they actually do have friends. Their friends don't have to be a part of the West. So there's already the war between Russia and Ukraine. Now imagine pissing Russia off again. Follow it, guys. That's just one of their buddies, right? Iran. Iran's long, quiet hand is visible in Venezuela's drone program. It was reportedly seeded with Mohajer, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, I'm sorry, was reportedly seeded with Mohajer 2 kits and expanded over the years into armed and surveillance platforms assembled at state plants by Tehran-trained technicians. So they are also friends with Iran. I mean, we already pissed Iran off multiple times. We were just attacking Iran. Cuba, for its part, has for more than a decade embedded intelligence and internal security advisors across Venezuela's military services and under discussed force multiplier that helps the regime police dissent and maintain loyalty. Although Russia, Cuba, and Iran may help Maduro survive, they are unlikely to save him from any determined American campaign. So they're talking about cautious opposition, that if Washington is hoping that its military squeeze may encourage Venezuelans to take matters into their own hands, the domestic scene is less favorable. The opposition to Maduro is fragmented and vulnerable after being deprived fraudulently by most accounts victory in a 2024 vote and a subsequent year of repression. So Maduro has buddies. And this is the last thing, and I'm trying to, no. We think about who was driving the bus. Who's driving this bus? Would Venezuela even think about us at all if we weren't going after them? So we have the U.S. government driving this bus. Now, Maria Corina Machado, the woman who just won the Nobel Peace Prize that I warned you about, who's also just another Western puppet, she is actually calling for the overthrow of Maduro. Again, this woman is a Western puppet. Listen to this.
Do you support U.S. military strikes on the territory of Venezuela as part of what you call a process?
I believe that the increase in pressure and the escalation that's taking place is the only way to force Maduro to understand that it's time to go.
So that's Maria there. Let's fast forward so you can see her face. This is Maria. She actually wants the Trump administration, the U.S. government, to overthrow the leader in her country. She approves of the attacks that are happening. And her big thing is she's ready to sell off resources in Venezuela to other countries. She wants a partnership with Israel. She's another Zionist. Everybody's seeing the connection now, how a lot of these things lead back to what Israel wants. And see, Western media will frame this in such another way. They'll be like, oh my God, look at Maduro. He's giving guns to people who are civilians. He's giving guns to people. They just want to come after the U.S. They were pretty much minding their own business. The U.S. government is usually the aggressor. We usually are. They don't want to tell you that. They literally gave that woman a Nobel Peace Prize. Now, here's the thing. Not everyone in Trump's administration agrees with this. And one of them is Miss Tulsi Gabbard. And I want you to hear what she has to say about this administration's involvement in Venezuela.
The United States has a disastrous history of military intervention and regime change around the world, which has brought suffering to millions of people. It's bankrupted our country, dishonored our troops, and it's undermined our national security. We must end this policy now before we get into yet another military conflict, this time in Venezuela. Now, President Trump and his administration have already instituted heavy sanctions on Venezuela. They've doubled down on their position that all options are on the table. I wholeheartedly support the Venezuelan people as they fight for a free and fair democracy. But the United States should not be in the business of intervening, of picking who should lead their country, and we certainly should not be threatening military action. Venezuela poses no threat to the United States. Congress has not authorized the United States to go to war in Venezuela, and there's no justification for our country to violate the sovereignty of the Venezuelan people. Now, the reality is that threats of U.S. military action and regime change in Venezuela is undermining ongoing efforts to convince North Korea to give up their nuclear weapons program, which exists because Kim Jong-un sees it as the only deterrent against US-led regime change. Now, President Trump is promising North Korea we will not wage regime change war against them, but at the same time is simultaneously threatening regime change in Venezuela.
So that was Tulsi Gabbard's position on Venezuela. So I'm going to ask this question again, because I asked this question about the Charlie Kirk, shooting as well. Where is Tulsi Gabbard? Why has Tulsi Gabbard been so quiet lately? I mean, this woman was out front and center at the very beginning of the administration, and she was doing a number of interviews. I ain't seen Tulsi in a hot minute. Hello? Calling Tulsi Gabbard. That was her position on Venezuela. Where is Tulsi Gabbard now? Now, Marco Rubio in particular, I really believed that one of the reasons why he was chosen to be a part of this administration is because Marco Rubio has been itching to go after Venezuela for years. That's his personal pet peeve. He has wanted to go after Venezuela, and he's also a Zionist. So it's a, bonus there if you're a warmonger. So Tulsi that was her position. She's been very quiet. Somebody need to check. Is this woman still around? Where is Tulsi Gabbard? Because I feel like they kind of put a gag order on her. That's why we're not seeing her around. But that has been her position on Venezuela. She's been very strong about that. And now we see Ro Khanna is also saying this is not the right way to go.
Urgent news. Donald Trump is getting ready to strike targets inside Venezuela, according to the Wall Street Journal and the Miami Herald. The United States Congress must speak up and stop this. No president, according to the Constitution, has the authority to strike another country without Congress's approval. And the American people have voted against regime change and endless wars. It is time for Congress to get back into session today and stop us from getting mired in yet another international conflict.
Look, Ro Khanna has been on the show before, and I think that someone just said in the chat, Casey said, I think Nick Cruz shook up Ro. I think so too. Ro Khanna, he's been on this show. He interviewed with my comrade Nick Cruz at RBN. And Nick, really let him have it. Listen, this is why you guys are losing. This is why, so it seemed like to me, after that conversation that he had with Nick, Ro Khanna has been coming out more heavy, right? He's been more vocal and calling out, a lot of this stuff. He's working alongside Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie with the Epstein files. So he has been more vocal than in the past. I have noticed that. But Congress did not declare war on Venezuela. And that's something, whether you like Ro Khanna or not, that's a good point to point out. He's just doing whatever he wants. Trump is just doing whatever he wants. And meanwhile, people are calling him the peace president. This is just insane. And another thing I want to let everybody know. Every time we steal resources from Venezuela, every time we implement more sanctions on Venezuela, sanctions kill people. Every time, we continue if he's going to strike these military targets, we're talking about more war. Guess what happens when that conflict comes to a country? People try to flee. Sanctions are economic warfare. So if people are hit with tremendous amounts of sanctions and they can't afford food, basic things they need, they try to flee. And when people ask, why are all of them coming here? Why are all the people at the border? A lot of them are fleeing that. There is profit to be made with war, with the weapons manufacturers. There's profit to be made here. That's why these things happen. What a lot of people don't want to admit, but this is just the reality. As long as you have a capitalist system, you're going to have war because there's profit to be made. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.